mentioned C19. Let's start there. What's the C19?
C19 COVID, bro.
Oh,
see, we forget that this kind of jumps off. Like
that, if you say the actual thing on the video, you get affected. So
it's like a curse word.
Yeah, it's like a curse word.
You say COVID on this podcast, we fine.
no, I'm looking out, right? So
you know, like a block or something.
New law?
The Android, the Dragon Ball Z.
Okay. With COVID-19, yes.
So, while during the brink of COVID, I was working in an emergency room. So I was front and center to see a lot of what was impacting the youth. I worked for pediatric psychiatry. Wow. So, like, in gross numbers, we were seeing kids come in, like, in record. Just because some of the fear mongering that was also going on in the media that was telling kids, like, you can't go outside. This is changing the dynamic. You can't go to class. So it was heavily having impacts on kids, even just how they related to their family overall. So you take children where you spend majority of your day outside of the home in a classroom setting. And now you're forced to be around maybe your 8 brothers and sisters in an apartment or in a home and your parents, and the dynamic shifts completely. So we saw an increase. And one of the most devastating things I would honestly say that we saw too is that human trafficking actually increased for youth because they were home and they were on the internet. So a lot of the kids who were sitting there, they were talking to adults or playing video games on the Discord or the Twitch. They were finding themselves in relationships with older people who they had more access to because they weren't in the security or the protection of the school system. Wow. So that was something that we really, really had to combat at that time.
That's a lot of space to fill up. Those hours that typically would have been filled up by a normal
being in a school setting in a safe environment where.
That's the check-in point, right? When kids are in school, they get access to basic needs, right? You have us providing safe environment for them to sit there and educate themselves, and we also have food that's provided to the children outside of the confines of that system. They're now at home, and we can't protect everything that's going on at home. Some parents are able to sit in the home and work from home, but everybody didn't have the luxury during COVID to stay at home with their kids and to monitor them. So now we're seeing it on the kickback now that school has kind of restarted itself. Kids are coming back, and they were exposed to so many different things that we didn't foresee by being on their own devices. And like I said, social media played a lot into that, because where kids may have some level of awareness, they're now having a higher level of exposure to things that can hurt them.
So you said you worked in an emergency room. So is that like the regular emergency room for like a hospital where kids come in for like a physical injury? And then so I guess my question is, like, at what point do you get involved when it's something going on beyond the physical emergency that the kids are going through?
So, there's two types of emergency rooms that people don't talk about, especially within New York City Health and Hospitals, which is where I worked. And you have the psychiatric emergency room, which is one port of entry, and then you have medical, right? And so any of those times, those things can overlap. So you can come in for a medical reason and disclose something that, like, all right, we're going to have to send you on the other side, so you could chop it up a little bit. That's when you would tend to come in front of me, right? So we would have issues like this, for instance, where kids would run away from home. And it could be something as, a staple as, I ran away from home because I felt overwhelmed with the rules that are going on in my house. The only time that I got to be a kid is when I was going to school and I was around my friends, but things at home are getting too intense for me. So you would have kids who would run away. And then upon running away, like I said, you're introduced to other things going on into the community that can have a significant impact. Those kids that would run away were more of a likelihood for a predator to find them. And then, like I said, that's when you would end up sitting in front of me. I ran away from home. I got exposed to something on the street. Now I'm getting picked up by the police and being transported here in this environment. Even things like discipline. We have all different types of rules and restrictions about how people discipline their children, right? It's safe to say it like this. You can open hand, let's say, tap your child on the hand if they do something wrong. But there's certain ways that people communicate with their kids or discipline their children that are not considered status quo, right? Mm-hmm. If this is happening in your house with nobody looking, a lot of people don't know. When your kids go to school, there's somebody to say, that's not cool, that's not right. When it's happening in your home, we don't have the same type of eyes on that situation. So it would rise to another level when this was happening at home for people, where these incidents that would occur one-on-one between a child and their parent would spill over, and you would have a neighbor activate 911 because they overheard something, or somebody in the community. Now you're getting sent to me too, so I can kind of triage the situation and figure out who needs help, not just for the children themselves in the situation, but their families as well. What kind of supports are needed to kind of keep an even rapport.